kind of coincidentally to this one, Clay, I've been watching a lot of, or not watching, but I've been on Wikipedia recently, and I stumbled down the rabbit hole of people whose last known appearance is caught on videotape, like security camera footage.
Sure.
So I was looking at a lot of those, and that even before we watched this episode, the 37's that we're going to talk about, I was really fascinated by disappearing people cases, and then boom, Amelia Earhart pops into this one. So I was wondering if you had any
coincidence.
Coincidence, I think not. So maybe in all the other pods of this one are all the missing people who are on those closed circuit videotapes that I was looking at and stuff like that. But I was just wondering if you had any favorites. I have a couple from the closed TV thing. There's a guy named Brian Schaefer, who I think was in like Chicago or Cleveland or something. He was a medical student in the early 2000s, I think like 2004 or something. Went out to a nightclub with his friends while he was in medical school, and he's on camera going into the club and sort of walking around, and then the last footage of him is he's outside the club and he's talking to two women late in like around 2:00 in the morning, and then they leave and he goes back into the bar, and he was never seen again after that. There's no footage of him leaving the bar again at that point. His friends didn't know what happened to him. It's still a totally unknown mystery, unknown quantity what happened to him. And then the other one, I actually read a true crime book called True Crime Addict, which was fucking awful. It was a terrible book, but it was about the case of the missing girl from UMass who disappeared when I was going there. Her name's like Maura Minnie or something like that, but she was driving up in New Hampshire and got into a car accident, and the last person to see her was just her waiting outside of her car for the cops, and no one's ever sure what happened to her after that. There were no footprints in the snow leaving. Car just disappeared, and she was never seen again at that point.
That's wild.
In a really remote part of New Hampshire where like they time the roads on a normal day, and it's something like 3 cars go by in an hour on this stretch of road, so it's strange that anything might have happened. But what do you have? Do you have any favorite disappearing people cases?
I mean, it's an easy one, but I've always been kind of fascinated by the Jimmy Hoffa story.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like there's a lot of people who know what happened to him, but nobody knows what happened to him.
Martin Scorsese knows what happened to him.
Yeah, apparently. It's not really a missing person story, but the story of that girl in the hotel who ended up in the water tank.
Yeah, the LA hotel.
Yeah, that is freaky as hell. I think they might have at this point solved that or
just went crazy.
Taken some of the mystery away from it. But man, if you see that video of her in the elevator and then find out how they found her in like a sealed tank, it's very, very creepy. But I have also kind of I feel like there's so few things left that occupy that sort of I don't want to say conspiracy theory because that's such a loaded term these days, but like the cryptid adjacent kind of space. But the one that I do find pretty fascinating is how many people go missing in national parks every year.
Yeah.
It's like a crazy number, and it's just never talked about.
Mountain lions just gobbling people up.
Mountain lions, if you're lucky. But let me blow your mind here for a second. What if it's due to the interconnected series of tunnels that runs the entire north to south stretch of the United States, which is where coincidence lines up with all sorts of different cryptid sightings, especially along the Appalachian Trail on the East Coast, or the eastern side of the United States. Lines up with a lot of cryptid sightings that all kind of are similar looking. Like you've got your Mothmans and your Jersey Devils and stuff like that. So everything, the descriptions are surprisingly similar, and they're all within relative space or relative distance from this series of caves that they think might be underneath the United States.
Yep.
So I'm not gonna say what I think that means.
Maybe Brian Schaefer's down there. Yeah.
Maybe there's a quote unquote documentary on Amazon. It's like a 5-part show called Hellier.
Yep.
Which is really interesting for about a half an hour. but it's 5 or 6 episodes that are all an hour long, and I think there's 2 seasons, and it was, I don't even think I finished the first season. It was so boring.
Yeah.
But they were kind of like, if you watch the first half of the first episode, you kind of get an idea of what's going on, and it's pretty creepy. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm sure, it's all just speculative bullshit, but it is kind of freaky to think about. There are things like that still that are not completely debunked or explained, which I find very fun. Well, I mean, not the disappearing people part, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Bermuda Triangle. I always loved the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah,
I
kind of
actually
fallen out
thought,
of favor a little bit.
Yeah,
now.
I know. Nobody talks about the Bermuda Triangle anymore. When I was a kid, way back when I was a kid in the 90s, Bermuda Triangle was everywhere. On every one of those like sightings TV shows, or like on the tabloid newspapers, Bermuda Triangle was like the only thing more deadly than quicksand to me when I was a kid was the Bermuda Triangle, and nobody talks about it anymore.
Yeah. Certainly, yeah, you can't hit any quicksand in the Bermuda Triangle, or you're just doubly fucked. You're going straight to hell.
I
at that point.
actually thought this episode was going to be, they're explaining the Bermuda Triangle, but it's not. It's a different part.
Unfortunately, no. So this episode is the 37's. It is the first episode of Voyager's second season. Came out on August 28th, 1995. Written by Jerry Taylor and Brennan Braga. Directed by James L. Conway. In-universe date is 48975.1, which is 2371. And this episode, called The 37's, while investigating the origins of a 1936 Ford truck floating in space, Voyager discovers a 434-year-old Earth mystery on a distant planet. A little bit of behind-the-scenes trivia. This was originally scheduled... So the first couple episodes we have in second season of this show, Clay, were produced in the first season and held back so that they could have a quicker return to a second season. This was originally planned to be the first season's finale.
Okay. I feel like somebody on Discord mentioned that, or said that they thought this would have been a better finale than the first season. So that's interesting to know that was in the cards.
Jumping off into whether or not it's better, I thought this was a weird episode.
Very weird.
I don't think I liked this at all. But it certainly got me thinking about like what the show is trying to do. But to me, this one felt like it was written by someone who had never watched Star Trek, but they think they know what Star Trek is and they don't like it. That's what this episode struck me as. It struck me as a real, just a real sort of mess about like what the hell is going on.
A lot of stuff going on in this one.
A lot of stuff, down to the fact that it's one of those weird episodes where so much is going on. They're just like, this is the time we're going to show Voyager land on a planet for no reason whatsoever. This is the episode where we have to pull this sort of thing out.
That'll buy us 5 minutes.
I don't know. I just thought that this one felt like it almost. I don't know if I would say that it felt like fan fiction, but it felt like a weird fanficky type idea that somehow got produced, and the sense that someone who's not familiar with Star Trek, it does it in this like sort of strange parody way where they pick like a sort of weird choice in Amelia Earhart to explore, and then they act on it. They have this whole 2/3 of it is like acting on this Amelia Earhart thing. And then it kind of gets into the point of the episode, and it so badly undersells the point of the episode that you're like, what the hell, what's going on at this, and how can this possibly be a season finale? So that's my rambling thoughts at first. But what'd you think about the 37's?
Yeah, it's really, excuse me, it's really all over the place. I still think this show has yet to really tank one for me. Like even this one, it's like it's cozy enough that I didn't dislike the experience of watching it.
Yeah.
But man, this one screams we got no money to do a show. I don't know if you noticed those rocks they were hiding behind, but anytime someone breathed on them, they would shake and move. And
those costumes from the alien, the Velcro mask. And
holy shit, when the crux of your episode ends up being how many of the crew are going to choose to stay on this utopia. And it's just like, come, let me show you our utopian city where humans have been living for hundreds of years in a beautiful display of humanity and
Garden
what
of
could
Eden.
be.
Yeah. ...
Wow, that city was great.
Don't know if I could leave.
I don't know if I could ever leave that place. Could you believe that place? I can't even describe it. It was so great. Man, everyone's going to want to stay. I don't even...
Right.
What are we going to do about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to knock it down because or it's hard to discuss it because, the ideas are so broad that when you get to the end, right, and maybe this is a bad place to go, but it's like off of that, you have to, their whole buildup is like, this place is so great, the crew is just going to abandon us, and like, how are we going to get home? And this is all going to be terrible. And not a single person stays, at the end. And it's like, well, what were you even teasing us about here? So maybe we shouldn't jump right into that at first, but I'll ask you, is it like, I understand what they were going for with Amelia Earhart, right? And because, I don't think that this episode does anything with it, but it's definitely a Janeway goes, hey, me and you, we have the same genitalia. There's something like in common here. But they don't even really do anything with it beyond that fact. It's just the fact that this is a famous female character, not a character, but a famous female explorer, basically, that Janeway runs into. And I was just kind of shocked, and it almost made it cartoonish that there was nothing more that Janeway could latch onto her with Amelia Earhart or anything like that. It just took so long, and they didn't do anything with it, and it left it feeling like an after-school special in a lot of ways. Like if Amelia Earhart was played by a more famous actress, it almost would have made more sense to me that they're like, we got. I don't know who the hell would have been appropriate at that point, but it's like this week, special guest star X plays Amelia Earhart, and you go, wow, they're really desperate for something. But it was so pointless, really. Janeway doesn't even have anything to say with her. There's no disagreement with Earhart. There's nothing. They don't even talk about exploring or anything. They just mention the fact that I'm a captain too. I'm an explorer, and she goes, oh, that's great. You inspired women everywhere to do these kinds of things. But there's no, I don't know. Amelia Earhart just wants to stay on the alien planet, I guess. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah, it's the beginning of it actually is fairly Doctor Who-y to an extent. I could definitely see an episode of Doctor Who where the TARDIS is spinning through space and all of a sudden they hit something and it's like it's a 1937 Ford floating in space, and then they end up meeting a Amelia Earhart who's been frozen in carbonite for 400 years. Like that feels very Doctor Who to me. But yeah, like there's the usually on Doctor Who when they would do something like that, there would be some sort of point to the interaction between Amelia Earhart and either the Doctor, usually the companion.
Companion.
Yeah. And they don't really do anything like that. There's so much crap going on in this, and the focus is everywhere that they don't even really get a chance to do anything with it. It is a weird thing because Amelia Earhart is this famous symbol of achievement and everything, and opening the doors for women to do stuff, but at the same time she also kind of bricked it.
Yeah.
So it's like that's kind of something you could play with, but I mean, obviously they take that off the board because they explain that she was abducted by aliens, which sure.
I thought that was actually the best part, which was that out of all the theories of what happened to her, the craziest one is the one that happens in the Star Trek universe. Yeah. Yeah.
But I really do think, obviously, because of the way that they set this up, where they have to land Voyager, and they can't use the transporters because of the whatever the fuck is in the atmosphere. And
Yeah.
they can't bring the shuttlecrafts down and all that kind of crap. You can't do this, but I feel like you're really missing the opportunity to put Amelia Earhart in a fucking spaceship. Like same thing I said about Generations. You're really missing the opportunity to put Kirk on the bridge of the Enterprise D. How do you not build your movie around just that?
Yeah.
And this is a situation where it's like, there's a lot that you could get into as far as how air travel led the way to space travel, and like what does that mean to her? Like how does that reality affect her? If Janeway is a big Amelia Earhart stan, and she actually meets this person and finds out that she's just a normal person who has the same sort of self-confidence issues or et cetera, to whatever you want to do with it. Like I feel like there's plenty there you could do. But that gets sidelined, first off, by Tackleberry from Police Academy playing the same character, just a gun-obsessed nut.
Why is their navigator wearing a suit?
Because it was the 30s, man. You wore suits. Have you ever seen? You should look up pictures of illustrators and like cartoonists from the 40s and 50s. They're all there standing in their studio painting with oil paints with like full suits on. Maybe those are just publicity photos, and they actually do it in their underwear like everybody else does. But
this guy was flying a plane
really
in his suit, I guess. Yeah,
you got to do it.
All right,
you got to look good for when you touch down. But like that whole thing took up way too much time and didn't go anywhere. Time better spent doing something else. And then once you find out about Shangri-La being just 50 yards away or whatever, that becomes the focus of the episode, which has nothing to do with Amelia Earhart. And you're in this kind of pickle where it's like, well, you can't. I was kind of hoping they'd bring her along, frankly. I was like, that would be an amazing addition to this cast.
Yeah.
If you just added Amelia Earhart as one of the characters. She's just on the ship now.
That's the close. The series finale is just Amelia Earhart stepping back onto Earth, and everyone going, "My God, Amelia Earhart! She made it all this way back."
Yeah, but like they don't. It doesn't play into anything, and at the end, she's like, "Yeah, this is pretty good. I think I'll stay here."
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. It's I think I don't know. It's almost a tale of two episodes, because I like the second half conundrum quite a bit. It's like that's the only part that's actually interesting to me, and I think it ties into what they've tried to do. I think we talked about it in Eye of the Needle, the Romulan episode where they find the Romulan 20 years in the past. Like we talked in that one about how shouldn't somebody on the crew be like, I'd rather go back home 20 years in the past and just be home at that point, and I think that would work. I just think that the setup here, which is that we found humanity, which, in my best case, doesn't really need Amelia Earhart to sell you that this is the best place you've ever been. So when they showed up at this place and they have all these discussions about who wants to stay, and then the crew can have more discussions about like whether or not this journey is what they want to do, or if they just want to stay with these humans and that'll be good enough and all that stuff. That's good to me. Like that's a better focus on it. But the key problem here is that they just spend 75% of the time on the Earhart story, and it doesn't add up to anything, unfortunately. It's just completely. I got it made me start wondering about the tone. This was probably the first Enterprise episode that I couldn't even really put my finger on why I felt this way, but I went, this feels like the people who made Enterprise at this point. I don't know why. I can't specifically say anything that felt that way. It was kind of the general pointlessness, and I also really felt it on the final shot, because I feel like a lot of Enterprise episodes ended with the aliens waving at the shuttle as it flew off. Do you remember that at all?
I don't specifically, but it does make sense. Yes.
I feel like 35% of Enterprise episodes ended that way, with the shuttle flying off and people like waving goodbye to it. And there's something strangely disconnected when the show does that, in a way that like that never happens in TNG and DS9 as I was thinking about it. Like, that's just not a feeling that those shows ever ended with. But there's a distinct tone that's in Enterprise, and I'm starting to see it in Voyager, where I don't even know how I would describe that sort of a thing. It feels like flippant or like silly kind of at the end to wrap things up that way. And I don't know if it holds things going forward or if things are going to change, but it certainly reminded me of Enterprise in a lot of not particularly good ways.
Well, do you think it's excuse me? Do you think it's just down to the fact that they don't beam up at the end? Because I feel like plenty of TNG episodes end with them just beaming up back to the ship or whatever, with everybody standing around. But
that's true. Maybe it is just the shuttle, the Voyagers in this one, but it is the lack of transporters. Could be. It's a good point.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem with this is if you are going to have a story where the core conundrum is, wow, this place is amazing. What if we just stayed here? How many people do you think you're going to stay? You got to show the place.
Right. Yeah.
You have to like this. You very easily could have had this entire episode just be, oh shit, we found an M-class planet where it's a bunch of humans hanging around because they got zapped here by like what the fucking Discovery episode where they have the church.
Eden. Yeah.
Eden. Yeah. Like that kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, okay, here it was, for whatever reason humans are here, sure. And you have your little conflict at the beginning, get that out of the way quickly, and then like you can have it so someone, either Janeway or Paris or someone is waiting for the other shoe to drop, being like, all right, so when is this going to turn out that they are cannibals, or like every year they pick a child who will be sacrificed to their god or something like. But it never comes, and it's legitimately great. And then so you're stuck with this problem where it's like, well, do we go home or do we stay here? That's for this show specifically, that's a pretty interesting problem.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work if you don't spend any time at the place, and all you have is just like everybody looking off screen going, wow, look at it. Look at those buildings. Can you believe, is that oh my God, it is. Man, I haven't seen one of those in forever. Damn, gonna be tough to leave this behind, guys.
It's true. Because the way they sell it, you almost expect that, it can't happen because the episode's running out of time, but there's almost this pull for Janeway as a character when she runs into this place to be like, the real conflict here is that, do I tell people how good it is here? Do I even let the crew know that this would be a great place to live, or do I just keep it to myself? And I honestly think I would have preferred, I think that's more interesting on Janeway's part if she never tells people about what this place is and she just takes them home and stuff like that. But again, it was a weird mishmash. Dealing with this stuff is only in the last 10 minutes of whatever the show is supposed to be. And it's strange even that they button it up that way.
Yeah, I do think that's the most interesting part, is her grappling with whether or not she should tell everybody how cool it is.
Right.
And, so like, the last, sorry, excuse me. Jeez, my throat is just still all craggy.
No worries.
Like the last few minutes there where they are debating, like they do all of like the important stuff off screen, because she mentions that they don't show you the place. And then she mentions the thing about, she says to Chakotay, tell the crew that there's going to be an announcement at 1500 hours or whatever. And then they just cut to after the announcement. Everyone's like, man, that announcement's pretty crazy, huh? What do you think you're going to do? And they're like, I don't know. I haven't seen the place. I'm not really sure. I heard it's cool though.
She's glowing about it.
I mean, I could tell from her voice. I think she was underselling it a bit. So it's probably even better than she made it sound, which honestly was pretty good.
After some of them are more inclined to stay there. I think, especially like the 37, the Japanese soldier who Neelix came over and gave him it pulled his eyes and basically was like, "You like your rice, Japanese man?" The guy's like, I think I'll stay on the planet here. Actually, people Don't talk to me.
Yeah, yeah. He was one ill-advised voice accent away from possibly getting sliced by that Japanese soldier.
Did everything he could there, just like a steaming bowl of rice, and like I'm
sorry, I didn't have any fish because I know you really like fish, but I did find a karate gi and a DVD of Sailor Moon, which I think you'll love.
I will stay on this planet forever. Yeah, it was a weird 37 crew. Even the whole, I don't know, like the set, like they don't even really get into it, but the setup of the planet is bananas too. Where, they get abducted by aliens. The aliens that abduct them build like a slave encampment thing where they breed them or whatever and work them. They freeze some of them, and then their progeny like rise up and kill the alien stuff, and they for some reason there's only one ship and they can't use the technology because they destroyed that ship or whatever to get back home. And then they become a peaceful Earth society just way off in the distance somehow and develop into it. It's this whole crazy cause and effect like timeline stuff that they don't have any time to get into, but it's sort of bonkers what they actually did, ultimately culminating in what we've been laughing about the whole time is that this Garden of Eden city that they never actually look at, but it was like it was such an up and down journey for those people, and including, freezing the 37's, revering them as gods and stuff like that. It all felt to me, it's just my point again. The reason it didn't sit well for me is that it felt like someone who was not familiar with Star Trek, but maybe what you're saying is more like a Doctor Who kind of a fan or something. Yeah. It really had that tone to it, which was surprising because Braga and Jerry Taylor wrote it, and they're not unfamiliar with it, but it was a distinct difference, I thought, anyway.
Yeah, I was very confused by when Janeway was like, "Yeah, no, it's they've managed to create a utopia just like we have on Earth." And I was like, man, they really introduced these guys as though they're ready to fucking throw down, and like they're a very warfaring race because of this alien race that dropped them there, and they're like, yeah, we had to slaughter all of those aliens. But then at the same time, they're like, the aliens have never come back.
No, they never came back. So they're like super militant about something that's never been a threat. Yeah,
yeah. Like I was waiting for some kind of like conflict coming out of that stuff, which feels pretty stock for Star Trek, that idea. But no, it's just actually no, everybody's pretty cool. They got, they just overreacted a bit because they haven't seen aliens in a really long time, and they didn't want to ruin the giant chocolate fountain they have at City Hall. If you live here, with your ID, you get a lifetime supply of graham crackers that you can use in the chocolate fountain at City Hall. It's fantastic.
It's that my kids love that song. Was it the Great Candy Mountain song? Do you know that old country folk song?
I think I would know it if I heard it, but I don't.
It's like where they hung the Turk, who invented work, is Big Rock Candy Mountain, Big Rock Candy Mountain. It's that kind of thing. It's like everything's perfect in this little world, and I imagine that's what the song is that plays.
Not everything is perfect for the people from Turkey, apparently.
No, that was when it was acceptable to just insert some casual racism, much like the bowl of rice in this episode was something that's okay to do. Yeah, I was going to say that their weapons were even fairly ineffective because they shot the co-pilot or whatever. But that was actually my, I didn't really like the episode, but I really liked that scene for some reason where he's in sickbay thinking he's going to die because he's got this huge hole in his chest while the doctor is very calm and treating it as though he just sort of sprained his leg while he's in there. And he's like, I thought that was funny, and I thought the doctor's reaction was funny, but it was another thing of like, it's another useless story plot where the navigator announces that he's in love with Amelia Earhart, and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't do anything for the story. It doesn't propel the narrative forward. There's no turn that's revealed through all that stuff. It's just played for that scene's, for the scene itself. And I thought it was funny, but it's another example of how sort of scattershot this one is.
Yeah, and then when he's all better, he's like actually forget I said all that stuff. She's like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. All right.
They're not going back to work, you know? They're not going
Yeah, I
back
know.
on the plane. I don't know what the need for protocol is.
He just found out that there's a utopian city full of hot humans.
Yeah.
He's not going to settle down with Amelia Earhart.
No, absolutely not.
He knows what she's like at 30,000 feet. Same with him.
He's been sitting behind her for days at that point. So
Yeah.
not necessary.
Yeah.
Anything else about this one? Really? It's
Sorry, the one small detail that I thought was really funny is when Janeway is trying to explain to them that they're from space, and she goes to show that Kess has weird ears. She like manhandles Kess like she's a fucking dog. Where she like grabs her by the jowls and then like wipes the hair off of her head to show where her ears have been clipped or something. It's very strange.
Yep. And she's a tough alien. There's no, I guess B'Elanna would be the alien that you'd bring on just to make obvious that this is an alien that you're looking at. You know, they don't have, Voyager doesn't have an extreme alien on it, really. Like Worf
Well, they got
or
Neelix.
Oh, Neelix. I guess Neelix should have been the case. Yeah, but he was busy. Anything else about the, like, what do you think about the fact that no one left at the end? What's being, so the production team was saying that their whole thing was, the point of this was to have an episode where it kind of resolves the people complaining about missing home. That was like the explicit intent of this ending, to have the characters stop sort of moping about, in Braga's words, I think he called them like whining and moping about not being able to get home, and that this was going to be the episode that showed that they're a cohesive unit at this point, in a way to kind of like shed the Maquis stuff too.
He does realize that the thing he's complaining about is like the core of the show, right?
That's what's strange about it, and I think it's a early insight into how Braga's mind works a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that I think it's the only interesting thing to do is have a couple people stay, really. I don't know how you deal with this long term, where the ship is like, in my best case scenario, the ship is slowly losing crew members every episode, and you're like running out of people who can man the buttons and stuff like that. But you know, I can see an argument for an episode where Janeway and Chakotay are like legitimately holding back tears, touched by no one is abandoning them at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But this episode didn't feel like the one to do that, because it didn't feel like the conflict was strong enough where you would really feel that the crew would band together and stick together and do something as a unit. And I thought it was just comical for them to go in and literally no one is there. And it's like, I don't know. It was strange. What did you think about it? Like, does the show need to have people staying behind? Does it have to do something else? Does it just avoid this idea at all costs?
Well, it's just amazing nobody stayed behind after the description of that giant water park that they have.
Maybe that's where everyone was, and they didn't even get the message
true.
that there was supposed to be a meeting. Tricked them.
Well, okay. So I given this episode, the way that it it's tough, because like this episode ultimately really means nothing, right? Like there's no consequences to anything. And I think you could have had consequences. Like if they were going to do what you're saying, which is actually a really interesting idea, which is they keep losing crew members.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to lose a bunch of them, but like every now and then, one of them gets killed. Oh shit. Okay. Now you go to this place, two of them are going to stay behind. Okay. Oh, all right. Well, you know, we still have, you know, cause they're not worried about finding fuel anymore.
No, right.
So it's more interesting if they have the fuel, but they don't have the bodies to operate the ship.
Yes.
Like that's like that being a possibility. So then you have to keep the crew together. You have to maintain this cohesive thing.
It's an interestingly small crew too. You know, compared to like the Enterprise, it's like a tenth of the Enterprise's crew.
Yeah. So, like, if you wanted to sell this ending the way that they're trying to sell this ending, I think what you have to do is the beginning of your show, forget the Amelia Earhart stuff, the beginning of the show has to be Voyager just barely survived a fucking nasty battle. and like maybe 2 people got killed or something, and they are in a bad way, and they end up they have to bring the Voyager down onto this place, onto this planet. It's the only way they can get away because the people who are chasing them can't get through the clouds or some shit.
Yeah.
And they're all at their wits' end. They're all afraid and angry at each other. And then they discover this city, this utopian city of humans, where it's like, it's the version of the Simpsons present, where everybody's got snake tongues, where it's like, yeah, it's close enough. And so now you actually have this conflict among your crew members, where it's like, man, we have been grinding it out, barely getting away with our lives from this shit, just trying to make it inches when we have to go miles.
Yeah. Not even guaranteed to get home. Really,
not even guaranteed. It's 70 at
Yeah.
full light speed or whatever. It's 75 years for them to get home. And so then when you show the lowest point that they can be at and present them with the option to choose to have the highest point that they could possibly be at, and everybody chooses to stick together, then that ending works.
Yeah.
Then it means something, because Janeway's just trying to keep everybody together. She's just trying to, all she wants to do is get everybody home. And every time she loses somebody, it's a fucking devastating to her.
Yeah.
And so to see that at the end, where she expects everybody to just jump ship, to have nobody leave, I think that would make it a really impactful ending. But the way they play it here, it's just like, who wants to stay behind and get ice? Nobody wants to get ice cream. Okay, let's just go home.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't have any punch or weight to it.
Yeah. I'd agree. I mean, there is a potential ending there where the decision that the crew makes is poignant and actually does bring them all together as a family. It's just another addition to the unseen city and the underselling of what kind of place this is, when it's just like, they don't really, it's very hard for them to make a convincing case as to why anyone would stay at the same time. Like, it seems like the ultimate's in like a sort of wishy-washy decision that you're just going to do it. They just don't have time to get into why anyone would want to stay, or what you would abandon, or what the cost of people leaving would be. Just too bad.
Like when Chakotay's like, listen, Janeway, I love that this place has free strip clubs, and I love that you can drink as much booze as you want and never get drunk, and I love that everything is gold plated. But you know what I love more? The Arizona desert.
Poor Chakotay. there's someone who'd pop their head into frame and say, this place has an Arizona desert too, and he's like, I'm just going to actually stay here if you don't mind.
Yeah.
This thing's better. The 37's is the first episode of the second season of Star Trek Voyager. We just got done talking about it. Thanks everybody for listening to the show. If you enjoyed the content, you can support the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File. I feel like I haven't done this spiel in months, but patreon.com/the Pensky File is the place you go to support the show. A couple $2 a month, you get extra stuff, extra podcasts, all that good stuff. And as always, Captain Tier supporters get a special shout out. Special thank you to Ben Douglas, Tark Latif, Andrew Charlock, Joint Mango, Christian Pouch, Kyle Barrett, Mike Burnett, Matt Ross, Michael Pond, Matt Cutler, Nick Sergey, Sean, Brendan Howells, Bradley Killens, Vault 13 Hero, Dwayne Hackett, Kevin Rice, Jordan Cooper, Russell O, Stephen Minton, HH28, Darth Moss, Derek Zajac, Paul Roscoe, Jake123, Patrick Seba, Dave Davies, Point Extra G, Barry Wallace, Jamie Crow, Captain Brazen, Eric St. Juan, Jakey's Gamer, William Scheisler, Rayhan Jafford, Nick the Rat, Zane Majors, Olivier Pardue, Groppler, John Zorn, Tom Hickey, Captain McMunchausen, James McLennan, Tommy Tango, Jonas, Tuvix Must Die, Disbroda, Admiral Nakamura, Clef, Edmark Starr, Chris McLaughlin. Next page says, Royo, Jeremy Boudreau, J-Man, Alec DeWolf, The Undiscovered Mugato, Robbie Duffield, Will Clay, Atanga Udom, Artorius, Zaylen Maru, and Jaron Hatch. Thanks, everybody, for supporting the show. Now we'll go to Patreon comments. There's a whole bunch of them for this one. And I appreciate everyone who, a lot of these are shorter comments, which I appreciate when they are so long. But the 37's from our patrons at patreon.com/the Pensky File. Tax Owlbear says, the 37's, a missed opportunity to add a new member to the crew. There's your point, Clay.
Yeah. Amelia Earhart's Navigator.
How can I, hold on a second. There we go. What the hell's happening here? Sorry, I'm trying to control F. The little box went away. The Navigator would have been good. The Black Farmer would have been an addition. The Japanese military officer would have been another addition.
Honestly, what my favorite part about this, though, was that black farmer who probably on Earth in the 30s had a terrible fucking life.
Yep.
For a number of reasons, was just like, this place is fucking awesome. And there's so much land that I could farm, and everybody's nice to each other here. I'm not going back to Earth. I'm staying here. Are you kidding me?
Janeway has a hard argument to make with that guy. Yeah, they all stay, right? That's another weird thing. Like the 37's all just decide to stay on the planet. I get there's room in that concept too. Like there's a room of sort of like conservatism, not like buying into the progress of the future. Although they say that this city is like a futuristic.
They
great
equate it. They equate it pretty much to whatever the modern Earth society is like.
Yeah. Calbert says, the 37's, I'm willing to buy that everyone recognizes the truck for what it is when it's floating in space, yet they don't know what gasoline is. And Janeway intimately being familiar with Amelia Earhart, but Paris saying, there must be something here called a key. As if keys in any form don't exist in the 23rd century. It is just stupid. As is Janeway's new superpower of identifying specific animal dung by smell alone, like some sort of Hannibal Lecter of shit. Landing the ship is very much Voyager's version of the saucer separation from TNG. It wastes a lot of time in an episode that needs all the time it can get. I enjoy this one. It's good fun, if a bit generic, but I would cut the whole hostage situation and get to the will they stay or will they go drama at the end a lot quicker. That should have been the core of the episode, but there's so little time to explore the decision, and the fact no one wants to leave is unbelievable and boring. 3 bowls of culturally appropriate foodstuffs for the Japanese man out of 5.
That saucer section thing is so funny. Because it's like, imagine being in the room when they pitched that, and they're like, and then they go to the battle bridge, and they separate the saucer on the ship, the most identifiable part of the ship, everybody loves it, separates from the body of the ship, and they're like, oh, yeah, cool. Why?
Saves lives. Saves lives.
It looks cool. I mean, it's cool, right? They got a battle bridge. All right, what's the battle bridge look like? Well, imagine the ship without the saucer section.
And it's dark on the bridge. There's no lights. They wanted to do that every single time the ship got into combat. They were going to do that sequence.
It takes like 25 minutes.
I know.
They would have been blown to pieces.
Yeah, it's a little bit silly. It's one of those weird things where it makes sense more in reality than it does in the context of the show. You know? Like it's like we put all the civilians onto the saucer section and leave them behind, and then this thing goes off and fights, but it just doesn't work that way.
It would have been better if it looked cool, like if the remainder of the ship looks cool, but it really doesn't.
Which part doesn't? The star drive, like the warp engine part you're talking about?
Yeah, the body of the ship does not look. If it looked like a cooler, like sleeker fighting machine, that would be cool. But but it doesn't. It just looks like an Enterprise without a head.
Yeah, it looks like, when they when you get like by like a raw turkey or something, like when they cut the head off, it kind of has that little flap that just hangs off it. It looks like that. Clef says, the 37's, the season begins with a groan as a pickup is found far from home. It's touching when the crew stays, but at the end of the day, Janeway knows horse manure by sense alone. 3 cryostasis pods out of 5.
I do also like the idea that when these aliens kidnapped these people 400 years ago, they just like dumped the truck into space.
I didn't even keep thinking. So, and why was the SOS still going too at that point?
Yeah, because the SOS was powered by
alien tech.
So was it the people from the city? Were they keeping it going?
But they don't want to be rescued, do they? They want to stay there.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
None of that made any sense. It's one of those TOS-y type moments. The Changeling says, the episode comes off as really rushed and unfocused. First, the plot is about a mystery, then it's an alien attack, and then won't they stay dilemma. And really, no one wanted off the ship. Also, it's Tackleberry. You didn't expect him to pull a gun. 1 under the podium blowjob out of 5. Under the podium blowjob. What's the, what reference is that?
I don't understand that reference.
Maybe something's happening with Changeling.
Is that a Police Academy reference?
Oh,
it feels like it might be a Police Academy reference.
Brent Mays says, the 37s, when Janeway scanned the bed of the pickup truck, she said, I think you'll find that's manure. Horse manure, if I'm not mistaken. That sums up the episode. Not sure why they went back to the neutral zone cryogenic well, but they did. 2 landing struts out of 5.
She should have tasted it.
Yeah. Really get into another decent comedy beat from Tuvok when the truck is running. He's like, can we increase the ventilation so we don't all asphyxiate? It's not a great line, but it's a very good Tuvok line. Cerulio says, this episode is so very stupid, but it's one of my favorite guilty pleasure episodes, right up there with the Space Lincoln and the Space Irish. I guess if you want me to like a bad episode, start with some lighthearted tone, optimistic portrayal of human nature, and some people from the 20th century. What is it with aliens kidnapping humans for slave labor only for the humans to immediately take over after a slave revolt? I wouldn't be surprised if the continual watering down of the Borg is one day revealed to be a result of too many humans being assimilated and they're just taking over control of the collective in yet another successful revolt. 3 out of 5. We live for rebellion. Point Extra G says, the 37s, I remember the TV ads at the time telling us 2 things in this one. 1, Amelia Earhart, and 2, she'd be played by NYPD Blue's Shannon Lawrence, which was apparently a big deal at the time. Earhart is a gimmick stuck onto a stock sci-fi plot. Humans from Earth's past freeing themselves from alien captors has been seen all over sci-fi and other Trek shows. This one adds the unique wrinkle with Voyager's premise and how much of the crew will want to stay here. I don't know if I buy no one from the Voyager staying, but the shot of the empty cargo bay is pretty impactful. Aaron Million said, go ahead.
It is and it isn't. Like, it's
the empty sick bay or the shuttle bay.
Yeah, I don't know. I get it works, but at the same time, I was thinking like that's a pretty goofy shot.
Yes,
of a very dumpy looking cargo bay.
I think what's weird about it to me is that I guess I don't even know were the people who were going to leave were supposed to be there so she could say goodbye to them or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it feels weirdly dismissive of the captain to not sort of show up and tell her you're not going. Does that make any sense? Like I was expecting a fake out where everyone's kind of there and she's like, oh shit, the whole crew is leaving. And then like, we've decided to stay. And she goes, oh, you guys, you fooled me.
Yeah. I was expecting something like that too. Cause that does feel, I mean, I don't know. That would probably be pretty cheesy, but,
it would be any cheesier than what it's a sort of reverse cheese or something on what they did.
I wish they had opened the door and they have that moment where Janeway recognizes that no one has shown up and Chakotay goes, oh shoot, it was Cargo Bay 2. No, it's over here. I did really like them walking through the halls speculating on who was going to leave, though. I thought that was fun.
Baxter. I bet Baxter has a Wikipedia or a Memory Alpha entry and someone else. Baxter just makes me think of the Fly.
I bet Baxter would have left, but I bet he did. I bet he forgot to. Nobody told him.
Yeah,
he seems like the kind of guy who's like really focused on his work. Never got the message. He was asleep during that general announcement from the captain, and when he finds out in about 6 months, he's going to be really mad.
It should have ended with just they're like, oh, and what if McDonald leaves? And like, yeah, fuck that guy, he sucks. It's like, yeah, I hope he's off. Aaron Million says, how can a rusty old truck from the 30s still exist, let alone start in 2371? Makes no sense. Also, I have a difficult time believing that nobody from the crew, not a single person, decides to stay on the planet. I was especially disappointed that Tom Paris didn't want to stay. It did really make me think of asking myself, what would I have done? 2 rusty old trucks out of 5.
Could you argue that no, I guess because I was going to say, could you argue that space would preserve the truck?
I think it would. Yes and no. I guess it's not gonna. Yeah. It's not gonna disintegrate, but I don't know.
I think there's also that problem, like, which is why they have to constantly keep fixing stuff on the space stations, isn't it? Like, because there's no gravity, everything is constantly pulling away from each other, no matter how tight you like tighten a screw or something.
Oh,
so eventually,
it could be. It's just sort of like my fear of what happens when you get in a plane, that the bolts are just rattling
exactly.
loose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought it was stuff like dust is extremely dangerous because of the speeds that it's traveling at, and so if it hits things, it just sort of like penetrates through whatever it's doing or something like that. I don't know. I don't even know why the truck is in space in the episode.
And potato chips and ants.
That sounds
you know that from The Simpsons.
We read Aaron's comment. Picard's flute says, the 37's, Tom Paris knowing everything about this truck, antique vehicles are a hobby of mine. Catherine Janeway knows horse manure from sight and smell. Manure is a hobby of mine.
How do you feel about, obviously this makes sense given the era in which the show was made, but like, how do you feel about, and I'm sure we've talked about this before, everybody on these Star Trek shows always having like an affinity for mid 20th century bullshit.
Yeah.
Just because it's a reference point that the writers have.
Yes.
And so they can...
Art doesn't continue past this point.
Like, I mean, I guess to be fair, there was a third world war that maybe...
Wiped it all out.
Yeah, took culture off the board for a while. And I'm not convinced that the Federation era has any real culture. It feels pretty dry to me.
Yeah.
Trombone, I don't think
trombone music is the height of culture.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's out there like really pushing the envelope with theater or something.
No. Beverly
good...
Crusher. That was her hobby. One of the 17 hobbies that they gave her. She was a playwright, but I guess it didn't go anywhere.
They got good gumbo though, or whatever Sisko's dad made at his place. But yeah, like I'm on the record with really hating that scene with the Corvette from 2009 Star Trek.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, I didn't really mind this. I think because it's not. I think the circumstances are a little bit different, but I don't know. This didn't bother me that much, but I do find it. I find it kind of weird and silly if you're looking at it realistically that everybody on these shows is always like, yes, mid 20th century, or something like that.
Yeah, and it's always Earth centric. They don't run into anything that's from 400 years ago from Vulcan, and like Tuvok wants to talk about how to start it and stuff like that. Never happened.
It's always it's because the show is made in America. It's always American stuff too. It's never like, oh yes, the films of Jean-Luc Godard. It's never that shit. It's always Universal horror movies from the 50s or from the 30s.
We don't have any Hyundai pickups or anything just floating around in here carrying bags of rice.
Yeah. Like if Paris didn't know what a 1937 truck looked like, but he was like, I was really into drift culture for a while.
Yeah. Has there ever been a case where the joke is on the crew, but the audience is aware of what the totem is? Does that make sense? So like,
sure.
Has there ever? I wonder if there's ever been an episode where the crew can't identify something, but you as the audience member know exactly what it is, and it's some sort of like joke on what they found.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean I guess the first thing that pops into my head is when Scotty tries to use the mouse on the computer.
Oh yeah, that's probably the closest.
Star Trek 4.
Just to speak into it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he used it like a communicator.
Yeah. maybe that's what it is. I guess that would be the movie that would do that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Latte Librarian says, having Janeway, the first woman captain to helm a Star Trek show, meet Amelia Earhart was a nice story. It gave a sense of progress in the female explorers passing the torch. The native human uniforms were very stupid and had terrible helmets. The biggest issue is calling a time period that was only 400 years ago ancient Earth. 3 stupid-looking helmets out of 5. I don't know why they were Velcro. That was a crazy combat decision to have your helmet.
All they had left in the costume room was just 14 yards of Velcro.
Benjamin Espinosa says, 37's kind of fun? Makes 0 sense. Why was a truck floating in space with an SOS signal on? And why were 8 folks frozen in stasis, but 300 people brought from Earth were enslaved? At least we know what happened to them. Okay, well, before we get into this, where did all the offspring come from? Are they offspring of those original 37's?
Yes. So those
people were all bred and created like a population of slave labor?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Episode didn't want to touch on that at all.
I don't remember how many people were in they said
a lot of them broke, right? A lot of the stasis chambers broke on them. This was the only one that was working.
there was only one room that still had people in it. All of the other stasis chambers were empty.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if that means that the rest of them were taken out and bred, in which case, like, how diverse of a society can you have if you've got like 15 to 25 people?
Do we know the original N number of people who made the society?
Exactly.
It would be funny if there was Janeway was like, wow, that city was amazing, but those inbred people was just horrific. That was awful. It's just the kid from Deliverance or whatever. Where did he? Yeah, so I don't. Yeah, they didn't touch on that, but it seems important. At least we know what happened to Amelia Earhart. The captain's dilemma in the last 10 minutes was the most interesting. Was surprised no one stayed. It would have been a good time to offload some dead weight. Neelix. 2 flasks of 400-year-old whiskey out of 5. Norman Buckwald says, in a way, this episode is probably most important in establishing Tom Paris's love for the 20th century, and while we may not know what a key is, it does add positive attributes to his character. Granted, you will not see it much until the 3rd season. Given that, as awesome as it was to see Tom challenged with landing the ship, it's undercut as to who lands the ship at the end of the 2nd season. The invisible cities, I guess, were not tempting even to the most skeptical of the crew. Finally, this episode is very hard to buy because, of course, Amelia Earhart would have flown back with the crew easily. She would not have stayed on the planet. She yearns to fly. 2 jumpy Starfleet reactions to engine sounds out of 5. Garen Hatch says,
This is technically a Prime Directive episode, right?
No, they're human. You can't Prime Directive humans.
Even if humans don't have warp capabilities?
I think so. I think that's been established before. Like they found human colonies and they've always decided to talk to them because they're human and it doesn't matter. It's just one of those loopholes. You can just get away with it. Might be Yaren. Yaren Hatch says, a good, if silly premise gets squandered by lack of focus here. The idea of the 37's is decent enough, but far more interesting story involves the human colony and the crew having to decide whether or not to stay. The moment Janeway realizes that the entire crew has decided to stick together would have hit so much harder if this had been the story's central conflicts from the beginning. Amelia Earhart and landing the ship are fun story bits that otherwise distract the episode's attention from something more interesting. 2.5 36 Fords out of 5. Grapple John Zorn, wouldn't this have been a better episode if the aliens had abducted them, were still around, maybe as a subjugated race? Also, if it was a Western, maybe Reed would have phasered T'Pol to hilarious effect. No? Hopefully we'll get to see that episode sometime in the future. That's true. That is that Enterprise episode, right? The Western one.
I couldn't tell you.
Brendan Hell says, Janeway knows horse shit when she sees it, and so do I. That should have been the whole review. That's a perfect little log line.
2 words. Shit sandwich. You can't print that. That's not real.
Who wrote that? The beginning of Tom Paris's increasing love affair with the 20th century. Only 2 people in the cryostasis are even given names. Janeway knows who Amelia Earhart is, but doesn't know what a truck is. Apart from not seeing the 3 beautiful cities that the descendants of the 37's built, I'm heartily sick of this ancient Earth crap. Compare this to North Star on Enterprise, 2 unseen Briori invaders out of 5. So a lot of North Star references, I guess. Because that was humans were abducted, and they were from the West, and they just created a Wild West.
Oh, right. They never moved past 1885.
No.
Never had a civil war. Never had a reason to progress, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's another point. I think we kind of talked about it, but it's like it's kind of unbelievable that a group of humans who were abducted from Earth and brought to an alien planet from 1937 then developed civilization out of that. You know, it's just it's a hard thing. I mean,
what they should have stuck to their Star Trek guns and had the people that show up all be dressed like gangsters.
Yeah.
Fire with laser-powered Tommy guns.
I would have just had the World War II still going on this planet for 400 years or whatever. Just make it a little bit interesting or something.
Yeah.
Was that... Go ahead.
Would World War II have started at 37?
The Easterns, the Japan and Germany would have been off doing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because 39 is when he invades Poland, I think, right?
Yeah, and I just read the book about the rape of Nanking, and I think that was late 30s. So the Pacific War was happening at that point.
Ah, okay.
Which that was news to me. Was the show making up the fact that Amelia Earhart was... Janeway implies that it's now well known historically that Earhart was a spy who was.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. That was a pretty cool detail, but I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah, I don't think I ever had. I know that they always thought that the Japanese had shot her down thinking she was a spy or something like that, but I didn't know if it was actually the case. I don't know. It's weird.
I think it is the very quick Googling that I'm doing right now. I think it is part of the lore that she was shot down by the Japanese.
Yes. You mean it's one of the possible options about what happened to her? Yes. Yeah. I don't think they've ever confirmed it, although I think they found the plane, right? I'm pretty sure they found the plane at some point. Or
I feel like every couple of years they find the plane.
Find a piece of something. Yeah.
It's like, what's the other one? Jack the Ripper. I feel like every 5 years someone is like, oh, we found new semen.
I wasn't even looking. You just can't help but find it all over the place.
This rag my grandmother kept for 200 years.
Told me never to
be
wash
fair, it was one of many semen-crusted rags we had to go through that my grandmother owned.
You can't sell
but
that
it was the oldest one. Everybody has their hobbies, I guess.
Yeah, I always kind of thought it was strange.
This one is from Milton Berle.
They thought that you'd sort of find her airplane because as I look at the map of the Pacific, it's mostly water out there. There are islands, obviously, but you have to. It's much easier to hit water if your plane goes down than it is to hit land, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think she probably just. I if they haven't found anything, I know, like we said, they kind of talk about it every now and then. I would be shocked if they ever did.
Yeah, no, it's it would probably be. We talk about the truck in space, but I would imagine it would be disintegrated at this point in whatever it is. Let's see here. Fabian says, the 37's, every time I saw Voyager on TV, it seemed to be this episode, which was not a very good impression. 2 out of 5. Yeah, I would not be happy if this was the one that was always coming on. Artoria says, when you haven't seen a show several times through and you watch the first opening moments of an episode and it triggers a thought inside saying either this is a good one or a bad one, well, this was a boring one. The episode had some fun moments when the 30's crew interacted with the crew of the Voyager, but apart from that, it was very forgettable and boring. It would have been better if it focused on the crew and Earhart wanting to stay or go with Voyager. Earhart flying through space with Voyager would have been a great way to start the season. A very forgettable episode. 2 rusty old cars filled with manure out of 5.
I just found a BBC report saying that there's a photograph that some people purport shows that she was captured by the Japanese.
Yeah.
I don't know how
it's just someone in like a Japanese prison camp, I'm assuming.
No, it's not even that. It's like a bunch of people hanging out on a dock. And they're like, the back of this person looks like Amelia Earhart.
Did her navigator take a look at that picture? He's the only person who I imagine would know.
He's apparently in it too, but the thing they're focusing on, I don't know what it is. It doesn't look like a person to me. Who knows? But
yeah, it's going to be one of those unsolved mysteries. Although not super. It's a it's a tough one because maybe it's just such an early version of a missing person story. There's not really an interesting answer. Is the problem, right? Like. She either got shot down by the Japanese, was captured, or the plane just crashed. Those are the 2 options, really. So it's not like there's a third, like, I can't believe that this happened kind of option out of all this stuff. Right. I guess Star Trek takes the idea that it's the alien abduction, but it's not, in the case of the missing guy I was talking about, like, I'm not going to sit, I've been sitting wondering, like, how could someone get out of a building without being seen from it? And how does that happen? Like, what could have possibly gone on that allowed that to happen? And the Earhart thing is not the same.
Yeah, well, I've heard that she's actually still alive, and she's going to be the vice presidential nominee in 2024.
Good. Vote. She's got my vote. Although I've sworn not to vote for anyone over 70 years old, so maybe it would be tough at this point. Matt Ross says, I remember more the local news stories that a Star Trek starship was going to land on a planet. Must have been a slow news day. That's the 90s for you. The attempt to explain Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan was a nice try, if rather quick. Why was Fred wearing a suit? That's my question, Matt Ross. I did not understand why he was in a suit. Anyway,
different time.
Despite the fact
you had to wear a suit to travel on ground, sea, or air back then. So this wasn't just you show up to the gate in your flip flops and your Bermuda shorts and your Thrasher sweatshirt. No, you had to wear a suit to get on a plane.
In that picture of the Japanese internment camp, was Fred Noonan wearing a suit during that period, or is it hard to tell?
It's hard to tell. Yeah, it's hard to tell. I can't really.
Despite the fact the humans on the planet did not attempt better communication other than an SOS from an incredibly shiny plane from 1937. It was weird.
Good shape. Yeah, it looked good.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of fake moss growing on it, but we can clean that off. Never seeing the human settlements was unforgivable to me and made me wonder what they didn't spend the money on. Made me wonder what if they didn't spend that money on the landing strut effects. 2.5 floating pickups out of 5. Only a couple more comments here. Christian Bout says, the premise feels like something pulled straight from TOS, and unfortunately the episode feels like it was made on a TOS budget. There's no focus, and it harms the best part of the story, which is the dilemma of whether or not the crew will choose to stay, and sadly undercuts the nice moments in the cargo bay. 2 out of 5. Jonas says, it's pretty clear that this was originally intended to be a 2-part episode hinging the first and second seasons. Had it actually been 2 episodes, we would have seen the settler cities that were so frequently mentioned. A lot, in fact, remains unknown about this episode. Who were the Briori? What did they look like? What species were they? How and why did they choose humans from 1937 to kidnap? Why did they neglect to unfreeze 8 of the 300 humans they'd captured? The producers apparently felt the chicken feet on which Voyager lands were inappropriately sized and tried to obscure them in post-production, but the feet are all that I can remember. I thought it should have tipped forward if it landed like that. It's too front-heavy.
Yes.
Concito says, the 37's, the fact that none of the crew want to leave doesn't much make sense given how antsy some of them are going to be later in the season. Still, it's a nice, forgettable season opener. 3 out of 5. Rayo says, Voyager was intended to be somewhat of a throwback to TOS, a Federation ship on the frontier, so having the show's first female captain meet Amelia Earhart makes a lot of sense in that context. Unfortunately, this episode just doesn't do much with the premise. With the off-screen cities, Voyager's crew not being splintered by one of aviation's mythic heroes, Janeway's own personal history with Earhart not being all that deep, or Amelia Earhart not joining the crew and replacing Neelix. The sight of cryogenically frozen humans giving me PTSD flashbacks of TNG's Neutral Zone, but at least this episode wasn't that piss god awful as that one. Imagine if Riker had said, well, from what I've seen of our guests, there's not much to redeem them. Makes one wonder how our species survived the 21st century. About Amelia Earhart. I'd never have forgiven Roddenberry. 2 out of 5. Last comment. Jonathan Moore says, a great episode if you like being told the story, not shown the story. Would have liked to have seen some of the Voyager crew staying on the planet and Voyager picking up a few extra humans. Emotional reveal at the end with the crew staying on board means nothing because we didn't see the things they could have stayed for. Could have been a chance to rotate some crew off and some on, or give us an idea that it had happened. There are 3 missing cities, but this is 1 missing city out of 5. Thanks, everybody, for your thoughts about that episode called The 37's. Support the show at patreon.com/thepensky. Leave your thoughts. Clay, what are you going to give this one on our scale of 1 to 5?
2.5.
Okay. I'll give it a 2. Yeah, I didn't really like it. It's, as you were saying, it wasn't like offensive. It wasn't the worst thing I've seen. I saw Picard season 2. It wasn't that bad, but it's like it felt. I think one of the most surprising things is that this was a premiere, and if I'd seen this as a premiere, I would have been sort of flabbergasted that this is the episode they chose to lead off the season, where everyone is kind of going to be paying attention to it. So it's not that good. And it was basically what I'm trying to say. It's not. If you have a couple options, it seems like one of the last choices you would make would be to show this one as a premiere. So I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 because I think it has some serious problems in it. That's it. The 37's is over. Amelia Earhart is still missing. Patreon.com/thepensky if you want to support the show. Otherwise, that's it. Voyager continues. You can get all the Strange New Worlds coverage. You can get Picard Season 2 on Patreon. All that stuff. And otherwise, the Discord, if you want to join there. So that's it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say as we wrap this one up?
You can also find on the Patreon Amanda and I as coverage of the Stephen King Second String movies. This month, June, we're doing Christine, which I'm excited about because I've never seen it. It's one of the few John Carpenter movies I've never seen. And also my Batman comic, Batman White Knight, Batman : White Knight : Red Hood, comes out next month in July. That I co-wrote with Sean, from my co-host from Badass Podcast. So if you would like to help support us, go to your nearest comic store next month and just buy every single copy they have. And if you buy like 10 of them and you burn 9 of them, that last one is worth 9 times as much as it was when you first bought it. So that's my understanding of how collecting works. So
the libraries of these mythical cities in this episode are just filled with that book, and everyone's extremely happy about it. You guys can check it out, find them where they're sold, buy them, take a picture of you with your 5 copies of it, and tweet it at Clay. And that's it.
Absolutely do that.
And we are done, I think.
Keep your clothes on, though.
It's
perfectly.
I was just about to talk about how warm it's getting in this room, but I guess it was just inappropriately timed. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I forget what the next episode is. I think it's Initiations or something like that, but I just closed the window. I can't tell you. Thanks for listening to the show. Hope you enjoyed the second season opener of Star Trek Voyager, and we'll be back next week. See ya.